Hey, book lovers! Welcome to What You're Reading, the podcast where I connect with fellow book enthusiasts to chat about our latest reads, the topics that fuel our bookish obsession, and all those things that keep us glued to those pages. Hello, everyone. Just want to give one quick reminder that if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for my email list. I have a very special announcement coming soon, especially for my romance readers out there. Today, I am sitting down with Stephany from Books, Tea, and Travel to talk all about reading books with rather large page counts. Think higher than 500. The conversation veered just a little bit, as it always does. We also talk a bit about our desire to see our protagonists in books in varying ages and sizes and descriptions. We showed a lot of appreciation for Cassandra Clare's amazing Shadowhunter series, talked a bit about annotating and our different reading styles, and if books really deserve some of these larger page counts. So if all of that sounds good to you, let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode. Today I am, really looking forward to this conversation because I think our topic today is different, but also something that I've seen people like slightly comment on online. And so today we're going to be talking about reading thick books, reading books with really big page counts, what that looks like, why you should give it a try if you've been intimidated, which is most of the comments what I see online, or people are just so intimidated to pick up these large books. So I have a wonderful guest today, Stephany, and we're going to have this conversation. But before we get into all of that, I really want to take a second and give the listeners an opportunity to get to know you, to know like your reading taste and everything. So let's start with, tell us a little bit about like your reading journey. Have you always been a reader? Are you getting back into reading? What does that look like?
I've always been a reader from a child. I'm from the Book It Pizza Hut era. And I'm highly food motivated. So that got me hooked immediately.
Yeah.
I've gone through my phases where I don't read as much or I do just full rereads. But I've been pretty consistent. I think my teenage years especially was like most introverts and bookish people,
Yes.
those hard ages, we just kind of lose ourselves in books. And I was pretty consistent again into my 20s. And then a couple of years ago, it just really, really just jacked up.
What is your like reading like? I guess maybe if we take like this last 1 to 2 years, are you reading tons of books? Like, what is your range? Like, are you in like the 10, 15 a year, or are you like way surpassing that?
So, the past couple of years, it's kind of been a journey for me. I want to say since I joined Goodreads in 2013, I really started taking it up a notch. I think the first year I was on Goodreads, I think I read like 100 books, novellas,
Wow.
and comic books combined.
Okay.
And then it kind of varies since then between, 100 to some years it's less than 20. It really just
Mm-hmm.
depends on where I'm at in my life. But the past couple of years, 50 or more a year, probably.
Okay. Okay. Nice. And then let's talk a little bit about like what's been on your shelves recently. So like what's one of the last books you finished? And it doesn't have to be a last book that you loved. Like I love spicy opinions. So
So I actually just finished a few hours ago the audiobook for Androne by Dwayne Worrell. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a futuristic sci-fi. Normally not my preferred genre. I think I've maybe in total read 3 books in the sci-fi genre.
Mm.
But every February I strictly read Black authors, and I found this gentleman. Normally I'm only reading women authors, so I wanted to give it a try. Again, not something that I'm normally into, but the story was interesting. The next book's coming out soon, so I will probably listen to that just to see how it ends. But not
Right,
normally
right.
something that I'm into. But it was a good little branch out.
Okay, okay. That's so interesting. I think it's pretty common with a lot of us, at least in the bookish space. At least for me, like I don't read a lot of male authors. There's a few here and there, literally like maybe under 10 authors last year, and I read a little over 100 books. I think maybe less than 10 were probably males.
Yeah, I think generally I read mostly just females. If they're males, they're usually classics, i.e., older ones before we were allowed to start publishing. um,
Right.
as a woman of color, I just want to support other women of colors,
Yeah.
especially out there in the book world. So I tend to just,
Right.
stick to the women, but I like to mix it up and try to see what other people are about. I don't want to just say all men authors are trash, but
Right.
not for what I
Right. Right.
generally
Right.
read.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Especially, I think, Lisa, you said it was sci-fi. Especially in that sci-fi, that's one, like, we're seeing a lot more women now in the fantasy space. But I don't know that I've seen a ton of women, especially women of color, in the sci-fi
Yeah,
book
I
space.
think most of the books that I've read, the sci-fi books I've read, I think they're all men. They're all written
Yeah,
by male authors. Yeah, I don't think I've read any or seen any. It's
yeah.
gonna be something I
Huh,
have to look into now.
right, yeah, now I'm curious, now I'm interested. Okay, and then what about, like, 1 or 2 books that you're currently working on? Are you like a poly reader where you're working on, like,
Oh
different
yeah.
books at a time, or is it strictly 1 book at a time?
Yeah, I'm such a mood reader. I'm also a situation reader. So
Mm.
I will be at work and reading on my Kindle on my phone. And that'll be an ebook, and then I'll have a physical book for when I'm actually at home, and then an audiobook for when I'm driving to work. So I'm usually juggling multiple books. Right now, I gotta say, I'm reading an arc for Essence and Runes by Taylor Lynn. It is
Mm,
a black romantasy, and
okay.
I chef kiss so far. I'm absolutely loving it.
Really?
I've got about 15% left, and I just can't wait for the rest of the world to read it because it really is a really good story
Oh
so far.
oh my gosh, I love that. Is it a YA, or is this a new adult
It's
adult?
it's an adult. It's
It's an adult,
not
okay.
too spicy, so if that's not your thing, I think you could really get into it. It's definitely low on the spice as far as, like, if you've read Akatar, this is
Mhm,
less spicy. But
okay.
the story itself is really interesting.
It's really good. Okay. And I don't, for me personally, I think when I'm asking, or when I'm looking, like, at the fantasies, especially the romantasy, I hope there aren't, like, YA spicy romantasies, but at least I don't care to to read that. But I'm looking, like, I guess when I ask, like, for YA or adult, or because I've had this conversation with a few people, I'm more so looking for older protagonists, right? Like, I, I it's cute that you're 22 or 19, and but I'm over the hump of mid 30s, and I'm ready to have a seasoned, or a older, I don't know if that's technically seasoned, but at least an older protagonist.
I'm there with you. I'm also in my late 30s, getting fairly close to 40, and I struggle sometimes with some of these young protagonists. I've started reading dark romance recently. Really love dark
Mm,
romance. A lot of these dark romances that I'm seeing on Book Talk and Bookstagram are college students. And it's just like, you're 19.
mm,
Why are you a serial unaliver? How do you have a body count of actual dead people? Like,
right,
you're 19. Why are you so
what's
angry? Go to
happening?
therapy.
Right. Right. What is, yeah, or the world, right? Like, you're like, no one can tell you anything, and then you go into the situation and you make the worst decision and you misjudge, and I'm like, I could have told you 10 chapters ago that this wasn't gonna work out very well. Like,
Exactly.
I need someone who's got a little bit more life experience.
Exactly. I need someone who's, especially in like romantasy,
Right.
I love a kick ass girl. I love a heroine who's gonna come in here, she's gonna do her thing, the dudes are gonna bow down to her, and she's just gonna
Right.
rule the world. But can I see one that, like, she finishes a battle and she feels rickety at the end? Like, can I hear someone who's just like, oh God, I need the Bengay. Like, I need an Epsom salt bath or something. Like, can we get a little bit more realistic here?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes. Oh, I love that. I think I just read, I mean, this doesn't have to do with a thick book, but I read a romance. Oh my God, what is that romance that I just Abby Jimenez's Part of Your World.
I have them on and that book on my TBR, and it just you're the second person who's mentioned her actually today to me.
I loved it. I loved it. But one of the things that I loved is she's 38,
Oh,
right? And so she's talking about like life and just life, and she's going up for this promotion, or what does she want to do with her career and her job, and what's the next thing, what's the next step. And I'm like, I love this conversation because this is this is real life versus like, and no offense, we're like, oh, I'm gonna go take a gap year and travel Europe. And it's like, great for you. But I don't always want to read that. Like, I love those real life experiences with the older protagonists. And I feel like we're starting to see that more. And I'm loving that trend.
yes, absolutely. To more females who are older and wiser. I mean,
Yes.
I still feel like once I hit 40, I'm going to look back and be like, oh, I didn't know in my 30s the same way I did when I hit 30 about my 20, you know? But
Right.
I'm really ready for late 30s, early 40s heroine who's, kicking butt, taking names, but also like, I don't have it together yet.
Yeah.
Because I feel
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah. Still
enough.
figuring it
Yeah,
out. What is this part of life that I'm in?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've read this is actually a thick book. Um The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi.
I have seen the cover on Book Talk. I just have not read it. I don't know. Something about the cover didn't draw me.
Yeah. The cover does nothing. So you're not alone there. I've seen some like special editions that are very pretty. Okay, so I don't know. This is a book of a month edition, so I know like the pages kind of are different, but this is 470, so it's thick-ish,
Yeah.
maybe not quite up there. But she is a retired pirate that gets called back into, right? That gets called back into like some situations. And I want to say I think she's like 40. Like I think that is like like she's got older kids and everything, and that just totally sold me on the book because I'm like, I love this. And so I've heard people talk about how she refers to her age, and I can't do stuff like that anymore. And so I'm really interested to get into that.
Okay. I'm gonna definitely have to add that and give that another look.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so as we're kind of talking about that, let's go ahead into our subject of thick and big, books and page counts. And I know really the reason I wanted to talk to you about this are a couple of reasons. One, you did a post on Instagram, and I'll make sure I link to it in the show notes, talking about like you had this nice little lineup of like all of these thick page count books that you've read. And I just thought that was so interesting because I see a lot of people, especially some of my friends, where I'm like, hey, I really want you to read this book, but let me preface it with saying like it's over 300 pages. So, buckle up because I know sometimes attention spans. And I just feel like sometimes a lot of people shy away from larger books and page counts. How did you realize that this was something that you liked to do, is to really get into these thick chunkers of books?
It was never a conscious decision. It
Okay.
was I'm a really weird reader. I do judge books by their cover. um, I don't read reviews, listen to reviews, read synopses, nothing.
Really?
I will sometimes read the back of a jacket and be like, all right, let's give this a try. Most of the time, it's a quote, especially if it's a
Mm,
saucy book.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I usually go in blind. Obviously, buying a physical book, off the bat, it's a thick book. The second you pick it up.
Right.
But with ebooks, I just go in. I recently, well, not recently, back in November, I read Pucking Around by Emily Rath. It's 760 pages, but I read the
Yes.
ebook. So I just
Mm-hmm.
downloaded it. I was like, all right, cute little reverse harem, which is my favorite trope.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, let's go into this. And as I'm reading, I'm like, wow, this is really good, but this says but page 500 already. Like, what's happening? And I looked and it was over 700 pages. I was like, holy, like normally romance books tend to be 300, I think is a decent book size for a romance. So I was really thrown off by that. Again, I don't look at the pages, so it kind of just happened, and it was
Mm-hmm.
actually, I'm glad that I didn't look at it because I might have not given it a chance. Just where I was in my mind, in my life, that's at
Mm-hmm.
that moment. But I am so glad that I did because that's actually become one of my favorite books. Hands down,
Really?
top 10, one of my favorites. Definitely my favorite of all of 2023, and I read 21 books last year.
Okay.
So
Wow. So because I had a little bit of the opposite reaction. So I was reading and it was, I'm like, okay, I'm vibing with it. It's going, the girl kind of, I don't know, there were some things and I was
yeah,
just like, dude, like, whatever. It's a romance. And so like I'm getting in it and I'm like, okay. Okay. And I'm on my Kindle and I'm looking at the thing and I'm like, I feel like I've been reading forever and I'm only 50% in. And at that point, that's when I looked at the page count and I was like, who in their right mind writes almost an 800-page romance? Like I was so mad because now I'm in. So it's like I'm not enjoying it. So I'm not going to DNF it, but like dude, what else can we do now? It was just so like caught off guard. So, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. The ending bumped it up a little bit more for me. I won't say any spoilers, but the turn and the direction it was going, and I was just like, don't tell me I just read all of this to get a mediocre ending. And so the way it ended, I was like, okay, okay, I can get with this. Okay, okay, cool. But yeah, that was one where I was like, and so I've talked to people, and specifically one of my sister's friends. We all went to brunch while she was in town, and I was telling her, and she was like, an 800-page romance, and I said, oh, I can't wait for you to read it and tell me what you think. And she was just like, I don't know. I said, I didn't know either. And I think it didn't feel like 800 pages. Like there was, that moment where I was like, how much longer do I have in this book? But it didn't feel like it was dragging at any point.
yeah, I agree that book, honestly, I had the same reaction, like I said, of like, wow, that's a lot for a romance. But I don't feel like any of it was unnecessary. I don't
Mm,
think that at any point was I reading it and like, okay, this scene could have been cut out in editing. I think that
mm,
every part that was still in the book after she edited was necessary for us to get the type of story that we got. And I really enjoyed that story for the personal interconnections of everyone.
mm, mm,
That was I think that might be one of the first times I've actually seen a polyamorous relationship, or read about one in fiction. Even though I do read a lot of Why Choose, a lot of it
mm,
is not polyamorous. It's mostly just the female with the three different guys or whatever.
mm,
And so this one was kind of eye opening for me. I've also followed with the series, and have learned a lot of new spicy terms. So I feel like I feel like that book, even though it's huge, is worth the read and worth the time because the characters are so well formed, the relationships between them are so well formed, and the world that she's creating. I want to live in that world. I want to live in a world where people can just love who they love, and
mm.
everyone around them is just like, all right, cool. So
Yeah.
this is what you're doing now. All right,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
And they
Yeah.
support it. So I think that that's a lot of the reason why I really love that book, but also really glad that I didn't give up on it because of the
Yeah.
count. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm curious. The next one, I think, followed the friend from the female main character in the first one, right?
Yeah.
2 questions for you. Is it as long?
Almost. It's just
Almost.
under
Okay.
500 pages, so it's not
Okay.
a thick book, but it is thick-ish.
Thick-ish.
Homegirl got
Okay.
some back to her.
Okay. Okay. And if I remember correctly, that she is a larger heroine, right?
Yes,
Like
she's a
she's
plus
plus, like
size.
the main character is plus size.
Yes.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah, she's. I think in the first book they mentioned that she's Tessa's a size 20,
Okay.
which I'm a big girl. So I was
Mhm.
definitely the second that they introduced her in the first book, I was like, oh, I need to know about her.
I need this
And
one.
I'm so glad that she came out with that second book. That one was also really eye opening, really just a lot of
Mm.
drama, but not crazy drama. Like,
Mhm.
just, I mean, I just really love the way Emily Rath crafts a character
Right.
and crafts these
Right.
stories. But yeah, it's not as daunting as Bucking Around. So if
Okay.
you're interested in following up, I would definitely recommend it.
Okay. I was interested because the main character was plus size, and again, thinking moving away from the norm, so older protagonists plus, like, can I get some girls that are described other than itty bitty? Like, can we please
Yes.
can we get some other reps in here between the sizes, and do they all have to be like 5'1"? Can I get a 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", or do they all have to be 6 feet? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's no middle ground. And so when I saw that it was going to be on her friend, and I remembered like her friend was plus size, I was like, okay, I might be interested in picking the next one up.
So this, I have my book bestie is an audio girl.
Mm,
So when I read Pucking Around, I was like, listen, you've got to read Pucking Around, like, please, so I could talk to somebody about this book. And so, the audiobook actually comes with a prequel to the series,
mm,
that one night. So she
mm,
starts listening. She's like, oh my God, this is kind of slow. I'm really bad. So like when I got the ebook, it came with the prequel in it. And I actually skipped it. Even though there's a
mm,
note saying like, hey, it's in here, you should read this. I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna jump right into the story. She didn't do that. And so like the audiobook with the two books combined was something like almost 20 hours, I think.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it took her a while to get into it. And then when I came up to her and I was just like, listen, you gotta read Pucking Wild. Like, older woman, plus size. My bestie is also a plus size girly. And age gap. My bestie and
Mhm.
I, we're about the same age. She tends to have a lot of younger guys hit on her, which is weird
Mm.
because she has an 18-year-old son and there's 18-year-olds hitting on her. So I was like, listen, you got to read this. It's an age gap. She's plus size. Like, come on, you do it. And it was another long one as far as the audio.
Oh my gosh.
But I think that book, I think for women in our age, of our body shape, I think that book is just a great reminder of love is found everywhere for everyone. It's there for
Mhm.
you. Even if you've done it before and you feel like it didn't work out before, there's always someone out there.
Okay, I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna have to try and, add that in the rotation somewhere. And honestly, I think they're great books. Like you said, like Black History Month, I tried to do predominantly let me back up. Reading predominantly black all year
Same.
anyway. So but during Black History Month I really try and go hard on it, and not just that, but like, learning about some history and something that I just didn't know about. But that can also sometimes be really heavy. So I think, sometimes having some of those just wonderful light but also life books to kind of add in between some of these heavy books that we're reading, or and even sometimes like with the heavy world building. Like, I just finished N.K. Jemison's book and my head was spinning, and I'm like, all right, I need I need something where I don't have to think and analyze as much.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I love about reading so much, and I love the fact that I'm a mood reader. I think I would lose my mind if I was one of those people that couldn't start another book until I finished the book that I was reading, because my brain is just, and I sometimes just need a very light palate cleanser type book to just, you know, get over these heavier topics. As far as what you were saying about Black History Month and just the subject matter of some of these more predominantly Black lifed or historical, books, it is very, very heavy. I always try to come up with a TBR for the month, and I've had the new Jim Crow on my TBR for, I don't even know how, probably since it came out. My 16-year-old cousin read it before I did. It's still collecting dust. Like, I just don't know if I'm emotionally ready to read those kind of books, but I have them so that I hopefully one day can start learning from them.
Yes.
I mean, there's one book that has been sitting it's called, oh my God, War Against All Puerto Ricans. It's basically, a history of the colonization of Puerto Rico from the U.S. A lot of people don't know that Puerto Rico was bombed by the U.S. multiple times in the 50s. And so they talk about a lot of that stuff. And I have not been able to crack that book open. I have a friend who read it, and she said it halfway through she had to stop. It was just emotionally destroying her. So I completely understand. It's really hard to read those tough topic books. So I always love a nice little fluffy, rom-com sometimes to break it up.
Yes. No, I agree. Absolutely. And they're absolutely, not all BIPOC books are heavy and full of trauma, because I think that's also a big misconception. But there are, sometimes if you are going into a story, and this isn't a thick book, but I read Take My Hand a couple of years ago, and that one was about the efforts for sterilization for Black and under, I guess, privileged just women. They, also did it in the jail systems and, all of that. And it was something that I had never really knew much about or really anything about. And so I'm reading this book, and it's it's great. It's written wonderfully, but it's also tearing me apart, because it's this happened. People lived through this. So those things can definitely be rough, but it was one of my top books. It's rough and it's hard to imagine and swallow, but it's also so good and done so well. So yeah, I'm gonna have to add that. What was the name of the book?
The War Against All Puerto Ricans. That's another really big book. But
Another really big one. Yeah, some of those history ones, I think I've had 1619 sitting on my shelf, or literally, and not even on my shelf behind me, on my nightstand. So I look at 1619 every day, and it's still sitting there, because it's something that I know I have to be ready for, the history and the things, and it is a thick one. I think that one is 500 or 600 pages, so it is, it is a little bit bigger, but whew, yeah, some of those nonfictions too are pretty thick.
Yeah, I think that's also part of the reason why people get so intimidated by bigger books, because a lot of times we're looking at them and it's a tough subject matter. A lot of history books, especially, or based in history, they come with hard topics, and so it's a large page count with an emotional topic. That I'm immediately like, back up. Don't want no parts of it. So I definitely get where some people just, they see a big book and they're like, because a lot of times it is very dramatic stuff that goes on in these books.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, depending on the way that it's written, it can be really dense, right? They can read so textbook heavy, and people don't people, unless you're in academics and, you're writing a thesis or, whatever it may be. Most of the time people are reading for fun or entertainment or, even some of that knowledge base as well. But when it starts to feel like I'm sitting in a classroom again, like I think people automatically assume big book equals like lecture or something along those lines, and even with like some of the fantasy ones that it's just going to be too hard to comprehend. Like if you're giving me this huge Shadowhunter series books, right? Cassandra Clare can write some thick books,
Yes,
man.
he can.
So you're giving me these huge books and I'm already intimidated because I'm like, this must be so complicated. Like what can an author, have to say for this long? And I think that leads me to my next thing. Like, what do you consider a thick book? Like when we're talking about big books and big page counts, what to you equals that now we're in a big chunker?
I think I'd say probably about 500 is like, all right, now I'm expecting something a little bit heavier, a little bit more in depth than my average novel. Um, Probably the 750 mark is where I'm just like, do I have time to invest?
Mm,
Do I think you're going to be worth the investment of time? Um,
mm-hmm.
but again, like I said before, I don't really look at page counts when I'm going into books. Um, and I have a tendency to buy online and get it shipped to my house. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know sometimes until these books land on my doorstep how big they are. But I kind of like just jump into them. I try not to
Okay.
get too intimidated.
Right. If it's so if you're kind of skimming these books or you're kind of like not really paying attention to reviews or what other people are like, saying about them, what makes it a yes? Is it because it's an author that you know of? I know you're saying you're not really looking at page count, but how are you, I guess what draws you and attacks you just in general to where you're picking these books up?
A lot of it, especially in the past couple of years since I joined Book Talk, well, the last year since I joined Book Talk, it's been a caption, a little snippet
Mm-hmm.
of a book that somebody posted online, a quote that they posted that I'll be like, all right, let me see if it's on Kindle Unlimited. If it's on Kindle
Mm-hmm.
Unlimited, I'll probably read it because why not? I'm paying for Kindle Unlimited. When it comes to buying physical books, I'm a little bit more picky. I usually go for books from authors that I've already read before or the continuation of a series. This year, right now, I'm on a self imposed book buying ban, unless it's a trophy buy. Because
Mm-hmm.
I have way too many books on my TBR right now.
Oh my
Over
gosh.
60 books. So I'm only limiting myself to buying actual trophy copies for
Mhm.
my collection. But yeah, if I'm physically buying the book, then it's usually somebody I've already read before, or usually a trope that I really like. So I'm really big on reverse harem. So if it's a
Mhm.
reverse harem book, and I happen to scroll by and somebody said, "Oh, 5 stars for this book," and it's somebody I know that we've enjoyed some of the same books, then I'll usually just add to cart real quick,
Okay.
which is really dangerous. My Goodreads want to read in the past year since I started on Book Talk I'm over like, I want to say I'm about 1,400 books on my want to read list. But I'm the kind of person that it's like, I work security. So I meet a
Mhm.
lot of people in venues, and a lot of times people are bringing books. If I see somebody with a book, I immediately stop them. What's that book? Are you enjoying it? Let me take a picture of it. I'll add it to Goodreads. And if I happen to see the book again later on, especially on Kindle Unlimited, I might just grab it. Like, I might just read it.
Yeah.
So a lot of my Goodreads want to read list is just random books since I started on the app that I've added from, not even necessarily recommendations. I just saw somebody reading it on the train, asked them if they liked it.
Mhm.
They said yes, and I added it. Like, I
You
have
just
no clue
added
what
it.
the book is
Okay.
about, but I just added it.
Okay, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense, and I understand the book buying ban, especially when you're addicted to pretty covers, because it's like I don't. And sometimes that's my thing. Like I don't know, this is pretty. I saw someone post it. I'm getting it. Like that's just how it starts and stops. So I definitely understand that, and it's just so great when you find a story that actually works for you. Where it's a pretty cover and it's a fantastic story and you're like, yes, like I can trust myself sometimes.
Yes. Sometimes you can judge a book by its cover.
So are most of these books that you're picking up, are they action packed, full of drama, or are there some like slow paced books? Because I think that's like, other than being intimidated by the page count, people are also, and people, I sometimes in this category myself, also afraid that this is going to be really boring. Like if you've got to be like, and I know like Brandon Sanderson, who is, if you're unfamiliar, he's a really big white author in the fantasy space and knocks out, five, six,
Several
seven
books a
books a
year.
year. Yeah. He's not like, some of his books are like 900 pages. Like, and so I look at that and I'm like, I'm probably going to be bored. Why do you need that much time? So what's like the mix up of of the things that you're reading with those big page counts?
Most of them are series, and most of them
Okay.
are fantasy, paranormal series. So there is lots of action going on, usually some type of war. As with, the Mortal Instruments Shadowhunter series for Cassandra Clare,
Mhm.
all those books are huge. There's just I I read to escape. It's
Mhm.
been my driving force for reading since childhood. So when I look at a big book, I'm like, oh, that's going to be an even longer vacation from reality. Like, yes, sign me up. Like, I look at a big book as a week cruise as opposed to a weekend's cruise, you know? So I get very excited, especially if it's an author that I know and enjoy already, or part of a series that I'm already invested in. The bigger the next book is, I'm just more excited for it because I'm like, oh my god, there's gonna be so much going on here. I can't wait. Like, I get like really geeked out every time Cassandra Clare publishes another book because I'm just like, yes, more Shadowhunter
she's
stuff. It's great.
she's great at world building.
This. I want to be Cassandra Clare as far as her ability to create this world. I've got her basically the whole collection, and I'm looking at maybe about 20 really thick books here. But every time she released another one, I was just like, oh my god, I can't wait! I can't wait to get into this. Look how thick this book is! Like, I remember during the pandemic, I got the arc for her last book in the Last Hour series. Height of pandemic, I got it. I think it was like April. We had just shut down. I had nothing but time.
Wow.
All three of my jobs got
Yeah.
laid me off, and I was living with my cousin, with my family, and I just pull out this huge book. It's like 700 pages long, maybe more. And I just started screaming. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so excited! I got this!" And my cousin's looking at me. He's like, what is that? Is that a textbook? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, this is the next book in this fantasy series. I was super excited. I actually ended up reading the entire world before I even read the art, which took me about like a week and a half because all those
Mm.
books are so huge. But yeah, I get super excited when I learn that the next book in a series is going to be a really thick one because it just makes me happy to know that there's going to be more time with these characters, especially if it's a series that I really like. If you love the
Yeah.
characters, if you love the banter, a 600-700 page book will go by quickly because you're so invested in the characters and what's happening in the story. Like, I can see why people get nervous about it, but when you look at it as my adventure this is a long adventure, this is a big vacation.
Mhm.
Like, that's the way I go into it. So when you look at it like that, it seems just a little less daunting to jump into these kind of big books.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good way to look at it.
I've got a couple of romances, maybe one or two that are big books. Obviously the Pucking Around book from Emily Wilde that we discussed, but Raff that we discussed, but Another reverse harem by Lily Gold, Faking with Benefits, which was one of my other top reads last year. That book's about 600 pages, almost
Okay.
600. So I've got a couple of pretty big, romance, but most of it's all, fantasy and
That's mostly what I see, and yeah, I get that fantasy needs, that we're in a whole other universe. Like they've got to set it up and let us know the history, especially if we're in the middle of a war. And some people can do it very well. Again, like Cassandra Clare, and I read those books. Like I think the first two, maybe when they first came out, and then I was looking for something maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick this back up because they were like it was so good. So I think even for adults, that is a YA series that I think you can definitely get
yeah.
into and really, really enjoy. And I think that's a great entry point for people who haven't read a bunch of thick books or aren't familiar, like you're not used to reading fantasy. I think some of those YA fantasy ones that are really they're really great entry points to kind of get you used to how fantasy works. Yeah, I think those are really great. Another one, and I'm just started the last book in the quartet this morning, and I'm like, I've been holding out because I'm not ready for the world to end. The Ember and the Ashes series by Saba Tahir. Oh my gosh, it's been such a fun ride. They're under 500 pages. They're like 400 to 500 each book. But oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I need
Such
you
a
to send me all these recs. Yeah, I think I definitely agree that Cassandra Clare is a great starter for people wanting to get into big books. I think she does an amazing job at not only the world building, but keeping you engaged while she's feeding you all this information. One of the funny things that we always talk about on Bookstagram and Book Talk and in the book community is that when you're reading fantasy, you never know how to pronounce words because they're all made up. Everything's made up. And so obviously, you struggle through that part. I started that series in my mid to late 20s, about maybe 12 years ago. And I've read all of them. I have all of them. Most of them are signed copies. All of them are first editions. And I don't think that I've been disappointed in any of them. And I've gone
nice.
through the full range of human emotions while reading all of her books. You can be laughing your ass off in the middle of one of these books, because her characters are just great with banter. I think she's just really great at writing dialogue and funny banter. And, in the next chapter, you're just bawling your eyes out because something completely unexpected happened that you were not emotionally prepared for. And I think that also helps with getting through big books when
Mm-hmm.
when it's not just this like da 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 of like inner dialogue and world building, but there's actually breakups of your emotional roller coaster, where you can be
Right.
laughing, crying, you're nervous, you're out here, oh my god, biting your nails, like, oh my god, don't go in there, don't do that, don't see that person, like, no. And it's just I think that when you get a book like that with all those emotions, the page count doesn't really matter,
Right.
because you just get so invested in it. And so I just try to keep that in mind too when I'm seeing big books, of just like, see what this is about, and if
Mm-hmm.
it can keep me feeling all the emotions, then I'm usually hooked.
Then I'm hooked. No, that's such a great, and just being I like what you're saying about going into it for the adventure. Like if you find one like a Cassandra Clare that you're into, like you've got so many more books now to where your world is just going. Like I love the Marvel universe because I just feel like they just keep adding and adding and adding, and it's so fun to see how things get tied in and what's happening, and all of those types of moments, those emotions where you're losing people or whatever is happening in the book format, though, is what you get with some of these longer series. And I love it because it does. It's like coming home, or coming, my friends are here, like another season of a great show. Like, yes, here we go again, where like you're going to get quality. It's gonna be an amazing story. I don't know if they're, again, another YA. I don't know if they'd be technically quote unquote thick. They are bigger books, but the Children of Blood and Bone series,
I
like,
haven't read that yet, and it's so annoying that I haven't read it yet because I really want to. That and the what is it, the Legendborn series? Those two,
mm,
I'm gotta get it. I'm just
yeah,
trying not to buy any new books right now, and
yeah,
so that's been
yeah.
my struggle because I'm just like, gotta read some of the books I already own.
Yes. Yes. So I'm not going to encourage you to go pick this up. But this first one is 525 pages. So I guess technically it is, it's within that large page count. Yeah. But it is just, they're so good. They are so good. And same thing with Legendborn. So it's so good. And I can't wait I'm giving myself time to get into Bloodmark, because I know, like, I need to have another book, like, on the horizon. I can't, like, read it now and then, like, wait until next year. Like, I need to give some space in between that. But for those listening, if you want to give it a try, I think the library is a great way to test them out. Just,
Yeah,
go pick up,
absolutely.
go pick up Children of Blood and Bone, go pick up Legendborn, go pick up, what is the first one? In
City
City
of
of
Bones
Bones.
is the
There it
first
is.
one.
City of Bones. I'm like, I know it has the Silent Brothers, but I don't think that's what it was. City of Bones. Go to the library, pick up those three, and just start reading and see if any of those kind of capture your attention. I will say, give yourself time to get into the world.
Mhm.
Sometimes,
Absolutely.
you got to give it. I know, like, sometimes you can tell, like, within some romances, like within a couple of chapters, if it's going to be for you or not. I think sometimes with these fantasies, you might need to give it 100-ish or so pages. And if your interest isn't piqued, might not be for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a huge believer in DNFing a book or putting it
Yeah.
back on the shelf. The whole point of me reading is to not just escape, but to have fun with it. And if I'm not enjoying myself, then what's the point? Life's too short.
Right.
So I just move on to the next one, and I don't feel bad about it because not every book is for everybody.
Right.
Like my dad always said, you're not everybody's cup of tea. So for us to expect that every book that comes out is going to be everybody's cup of tea is ludicrous. If you're not into it, you're not into it. If you feel like you're just
Right.
not into it now, put it down and read it later. There's been a lot of books that I've had on my shelves for years that I've gone to and I'm like, all right, let's try this one again. And I'm just not feeling it, and I put it back and I'll try it again later. And then I really end up enjoying it and really upset that I took so long to read it,
Right. Right.
Most recently, Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. I had that
Oh
on
my
my
gosh.
Kindle for almost a year. And I just read it and I was just like, how did I wait this long? Like, I mean, I remember 8% into the book, I was already annotating. I was just like, oh no, I definitely have to buy this book so I can annotate my own copy. Like, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, why is this
Yeah.
book so good? So
Such a good book.
I get what can be daunting about big bucks. But I feel like
Hmm.
just don't push yourself into having to love it immediately or
Right.
force yourself to finish it because you started it. That's my general outlook with all books, but especially with big books. They are very time consuming. So don't force yourself, you know?
Right.
But you could read two really great short books in the time that you read one Cassandra Clare book. And if you don't like it, it's going to just drag on and on and on. And you're just going to waste your time. Why? You know?
Right.
I don't know if someone saying they don't like the Mortal Instruments would be someone I want to be bookish friends with. But, if that's not your thing, guys, I get it. But I am going to judge you a little bit.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
really
they're
is.
they are fantastic books. Now I have to ask, did you read, she just released and just being like November, I don't know, October, November of 2023, a adult book, Sword Catcher, I think.
I've seen it. I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
I wasn't. I'm not sure how I feel about. the book. You know, like
Okay.
the synopsis. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, it's Cassandra Clare. I'll probably read it at some point. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I'm in that big of a rush to read them. I'm really excited. She's got her last Shadowhunters book coming out. I believe it's
Mm.
later this year, the first one, the Wicked Powers trilogy, which, I mean, if I know you said you've only read the first one, the Mortal Instruments, correct?
I've finished the Mortal Instrument series. Now I don't know where to go next because I feel like I've lost track of all of the things that she's done. So I don't know where to go next. And I will tell you, I cried in the last book. Like there were a couple of scenes that I was like, "Oh dear, what's happening?" I was not expecting to cry, but I loved those characters
Yes.
so much. Izzy, Alex, Jace, like all of them.
Simon's a little. I love
Simon,
Simon.
yes. Yes, I was like, and then immediately I was like, okay, I need to find the show because I'm not ready to be done with these people yet.
So, what did you think about the show?
I didn't watch it. I haven't watched it yet. So I've seen the movie, but I haven't watched the show yet. It is sitting on my Hulu like to watch list.
What
Is
did you
it
think?
I'm nervous.
What did you think about the movie?
The first movie was, oh, you know, it was fine. It was just okay, entertaining to watch. I honestly wish they would have kept going because I feel like that's kind of where things really start to pick up. Like we're traveling to different worlds and we're seeing like the different things. We're meeting the parents finally. I think that's my one gripe with some of these YA novels. I'm like, where the heck
Where are all
are
the
the
kids?
parents?
Where are all the kids? Where are the parents? Like, I don't understand where the adult supervision is. So
And why did the kids have to save the day? Like, come on, mom, you not more powerful? Like, what is happening? Like, I think that's my one thing.
cleaning up the parents' mess from years prior, like decades later. What I love about that series, and which is why I love the books so much, even though they're huge, um, is that throughout all the series, there's so much interconnection. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Magnus, who we meet in the first series, is immortal,
Mm-hmm.
so he's kind of seen throughout all of the books. He kind of
Ah,
pops up
okay.
in the past and then here and there, and throughout the series, there's always, conversations of like, oh, so this ancestor that we met in one of the first series was friends with so and so now you guys are now cousins or whatever, you know, decades later, centuries later, whatever. And I just really like the way that she's interwoven the characters, the storylines. And I'm a huge found family person. I
Mm-hmm.
love the found family trope. So, and her books just have so much of that, of, people who, especially the diversity of her characters, um, color, religion, sexual
Mm-hmm.
orientation. There's a lot more queer characters as you read further on in the series. And so I just really like the diversity and the way that they all kind of are interwoven, and no matter the time period, no matter the situation, they're family. They've become a
Mm-hmm.
family. They've battled or whatever, that camaraderie. And I just really love the way she does that. There's just the communication between the characters over the centuries, and just their commitment to each other, their friendships, their loves. I just really love the way Cassandra Clare can write a book. Like, she writes.
She does. She does a great job. She does. She
Does.
does a great job. While you were talking, it made me think. Have you read anything from Chloe Gong?
No, I have not.
She's got a couple of series now. Her first series is a duology, These Violent Delights, and that first book is a loose Romeo and Juliet retelling,
Okay.
but it's set in like 1940s Shanghai.
Okay.
Like it's great. It's got a loose magic system, but there is some magic in there. And then there's a second book that follows up. And I just read one of her other ones, Immortal Longings. It's closer to the 400-page book, but she does a great job of world building, character building, some of that found family, especially in that first one, because we're talking Romeo and Juliet, so there's a lot of like other people who become family because they're growing up in these two rival gangs together, what have you. And that the found family just made me think of it because I think she does such a great job. And then it's like, to me it was original, like Romeo and Juliet, but you're dropping them in China in 1940, and like she's talking about different things with like Communist Party. I mean, it's so well done.
I haven't really read too many retellings. I've just recently started getting into different types of retellings. That actually sounds like a really good retelling. Like that sounds like something I would definitely be interested in. Especially because Romeo and Juliet annoys the bejesus out of me mostly. I was a huge Shakespeare fan growing up. As a kid, I mean, I literally have his collected works because in school that's all they push. Older,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
a white gentleman. Didn't know any better at the time, obviously. But yeah, Romeo and Juliet really annoys the heck out of me, especially when people are like, "Oh my god, it's such a Romeo and Juliet romance," and it's just like, did you read the book? Did you? That's not the romance I want. Mm-mm.
It did it
That
well. Yeah.
was two unsupervised children who met for like 3 days and committed suicide. Like,
Yeah.
that's not the story I want. I want happy
Yeah.
ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that the idea of a communist turn on it, a spin on it, and in China in the 40s, I think that actually sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's very so our female character is Chinese and the male character is Russian.
Ooh.
So it's very, I mean, and they're like families or rival gangs, but we're not getting, and this isn't a spoiler, they know each other. Like we're not getting like this 3-day intense like what's happening. It's a great way to take most of those tropes and kind of what's happening, like the outline of Romeo and Juliet, and flip it on its head and make it something else. And it's pretty long. I did the audio on those and I really enjoyed them, both book 1 and 2 on the audio. And they're long, but again, the way that Chloe Gong writes and puts you in the story, I was sold. Okay, so just another question before we come up on time here. I'm curious about a few things. So one is, and I think you kind of mentioned it, as you're reading these books, are you taking time to annotate them and tab them? Do you have any type of system like where you approach like, and I'll just share for me, when I'm going into a big book, I usually tab every 100 pages just so like it's not looking like this big bohemian theme of me. It's like, I'm almost close to the first 100. Now I'm almost close to the second 100. So I don't know, that does something for me to kind of help me move along. And then I'm also tabbing things. So books where there's a bunch of characters, like every time I'm introduced to a character, I've learned I need to start tabbing because this person may come back up or they're going to mention him and I need to be able to easily flip back to see like who was this person and why is he relevant. Do you have anything like that, or are you just jumping in and you're here for the ride?
I'm reckless. I just jump in. I started annotating. I started trying annotating end of last year. Actually, no, 2 years ago I did it with A Court of Thorns and Roses. It was the first book that I was like, all right, let's see what this annotating thing's about. I didn't know what I was really doing. I think most of the tabs that I just took little super skinny post-it marks. On my Kindle, it's a little bit different. I like to highlight passages or quotes that I really enjoyed. But other than that, I'm really not into annotating because I usually just get so lost in the book that I don't want to pull myself out of it to write something down. I have recently joined Fable, and they do
Okay.
have a part where you can actually put in a quote for your book.
Okay. Okay.
So I do tend to do that when I find a quote that I really like. I think probably the book that I posted the most quotes from was Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop, just because such great lines by Janelle. I mean, really. But other than that, I'm really not into annotating books. I spent 16 years as a waitress, so I have a really
Mm.
oddly good memory.
Yeah.
Not to the point where I can quote books, because I'm not there yet, but enough so that I can remember, like, if you've introduced a character in page 50 and now we're at page 600, I'm like, it might take me a while, but I'm usually like, we're doing it. Oh, that's who it was. And I'm pretty good at recalling, so I'm not too much of, oh, I need to, like, tab this so I can refer back. Usually the only times that I'll refer back to something is if there's a map in the beginning of the book. Another big book series that I really love is J.R. Ward's Black Dagger Brotherhood series. The
Mm.
first book, I have a mass media publication of it, so it's like 600 and something pages. That book, the characters have their own language. They speak English, but they also have the language of their ancestors. And so she does a glossary in the front of every book. So sometimes I will go back and refer back, just to as a refresher. I think that book, she releases book, believe 22 next week.
Oh my
11.
gosh.
Yeah. It's actually crazy because I was reading the synopsis for that, and that is the main character of that book is the daughter of one of the characters from like the third book in the series. And I was like, I did the math and I was like, there's no way she can be an adult and have an adult relationship now, like this book. And I did the math and I was like, oh, she's 20.
Is this a vampire?
Yes, it's a vampire
Okay.
erotic vampire series. Very action packed. I will say though that it is very formulaic.
Okay.
Every book, it's you already know. All right, they're getting together. They're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
mates. This is going to be great. But there's a whole like species war, good versus evil type situation that gives it a good storyline as well. But those books, I mean, like I said, I think we're on book 22. She's got about 3 or 4 spin-off series as well from it. And those books are like, 400 to 700 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Great
Wow.
series, but again, I enjoy the fact that she has a glossary of terms in the front because I've got enough languages I'm trying to learn myself. I can't keep track of all of these others. The good thing is that most of the words you can kind of figure out what they're going to mean, in English.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as annotating, I don't really think that that's something that I'm really doing. Also, I cringe at the idea of writing in my books.
Oh boy. I love
Um,
it.
I see people do it online all the time, and I'm like, all right, whatever floats your boat. But oh my god, no! I would never loan you one of my books.
So I will say I love it. I absolutely love marking up my books, but when I make a mistake, now I feel like I have to buy a new copy. Like a whole new copy.
And that is my one of my fears. It's just like I don't want to make a mistake and like write something in where I don't want to. I have seen those tabs that you can actually write on. I do
Yes.
have a few of them. So like there's 1 or 2 books that I tried to like annotate. And so like I wrote like, oh, super cute or an
Mm-hmm.
arrow to a quote or something like that. But my fear is that I'm gonna really mark it up. And
Yeah.
especially because right now I also have an account with Pango Buys. I don't know if you're familiar with
Mm.
Pango. I'm getting too old to move my library. My back just can't handle another move of this
Mm-hmm.
library. So I've been trying to unload some of the older books that I were gifted but have no idea that like I'm not going to read them. I
Right.
get a lot of people in my life that'll just like give me a book. They're like, "Oh, I got this at so and so. I'm not a reader. Here, read it." And I'm just like, "That's not a book I have." Like my uncle gave me like book 4 of like Game of Thrones or something like that, like a random book in the series, and I'm just like, I've never read the books. I've never seen the show. I have no interest in doing either of them. And now you're giving me a random book in the series that I'm going to then have to buy all the books before
All of the
and the books
others.
after. Like, hard pass, you know?
I will say I haven't read the books. Loved the series though. So that is one where I'm like, I don't know, but I think like that's another one. I think I was like, well, let me, maybe I'll do the audio. That would be a cool, listen while you work because I kind of already know like the world and what's happening, so I don't have to listen as closely. But I looked at that audio and I think the audio was like 30 hours and I was like, That's just book one. Like, I don't know about this. So, I guess my last kind of point here before we get into like our lightning round, is there anything that you've read that you don't think has been deserving of the page count?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that I'm a writer. I love to write. So for me, when I go into a book, I always like to remind myself that this is someone's labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
It's 600 pages, and the author felt the need to make it 600 pages. I've been lucky enough that all the big books that I've read, I've really enjoyed and really loved. Again, a chunk of them are the Cassandra Clare series. Another
Mm-hmm.
large chunk is the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. Um, so I don't think that I've really come across a time where it's just like, oh, this was too overwritten. I tend to find the books that I do seem to think about, like, oh, this was a little overwritten, or this could have been explained way quicker, tend to be smaller books for me. Um, where it's just like, all right, this 300-page book could have been 200 pages. Like, I didn't need that whole scene there, you know? No, I think I've been lucky enough that all of them were deserving their long page counts.
Of the page count. Okay. Okay. Do you have any recommendations, like just, a few recommendations for people other than Cassandra Clare, who are looking to kind of get into, they're ready to jump into a world and stay in this world for a little bit. Are there any books that you think might be great for people to give a try?
Well, we've talked about my three favorite, Black Dagger Brotherhood, Cassandra Clare, and Fucking Around series. But I also have to say A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I'm not sure if you know,
Oh.
it was made into a TV show right around the pandemic on AMC. That started out as a trilogy, and now she's
Mhm.
releasing book 5 this summer,
Okay.
actually, or this fall. It is a paranormal, a little bit of romance in it. It's got time travel. It's got historical fiction in it. It's got a little bit of
Mm.
sci-fi. It's a really great mix of things. So if you're looking for something that isn't heavy historical and emotionally, but also just really well written with a lot of different aspects, I want to say, because like
Mhm.
one book is a historical fiction, another
Mhm.
one is more science fiction. Like it's just a lot of
Okay.
mix of things. I think that that's a really great book, really great book to start, a really great series to start. I want to say the the first three books are about 500 to 600 page books, and
Okay.
then the
Oh,
fourth one
wow.
is maybe about 300. And then I don't know how long the fifth one will be, but that's
Okay.
definitely a really good immersive fantasy book to get into if you want to try.
Okay, love it. I don't think I've ever I'm familiar with the name. I don't think I really knew what it was about. I mean, I just figured like, oh, it's about witches. From the title, but I didn't think I knew that. And I don't think I knew there was a TV show. So, definitely something I will be interested in checking out a little bit more to see, yeah, what it is. Cuz I like jumping, and I think sometimes series, like, it takes the guessing out of stuff. Like, oh, okay, I'm gonna read this book, and then it's like, well, what do I want to read next? I don't know, I just start in the next book in the series. Like,
Exactly.
sometimes it takes that thought of like trying to find your next great book out, like, where you can just go back to an author that they deliver every time. This one may not be the best book of the series, I may not like it as much as something else that I've read from this author, but I know I'm gonna get a great story and I'm gonna be invested. It's gonna give me the ride that I'm looking for, and it's just a no-brainer. So I think that's, more so series why I love picking up series.
Yeah, I'm a series girl all the way. I love, like I
Yeah.
said, reading is an escape. It's a vacation for me. So the longer I could stay on vacay, the better.
Right, right. All right. Well, so we've come down to our last little round, and it's called There's a Book for That. And I'm just going to kind of rapid fire questions to you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Okay.
All right. So, what was the first book that you read with a large page count?
Dark Lover, the first book of the Black Dagger Brotherhood series by J.R. Ward.
Nice. A book that's been on your TBR for over a year.
Queenie by Candace Williams.
If you ever get around to that, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts.
Okay. I will definitely let you know. I plan to
Yes.
read it sometime this year. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yes. Definitely interested to hear your thoughts on that. The last book that you DNF'd.
American King by Sierra Simone.
Sierra Simone, I know that name.
So she did the Priest series,
Ah.
and the new Camelot series. This is actually the third book in this trilogy, and I'm really upset that I can't get through it, but I should have DNF'd it at book one when I thought I should have.
Oh,
Which is why
wow.
I am a huge pusher for people to DNF books I don't like, because
So you're on book 3 now, and you're finally like, I'm done.
yeah, book one had a couple of scenes where I was like, I don't know if I really feel this. But the spice was spicing and everything else was really interesting. And then book two ended with a twist that I just couldn't get on board with. And so it took me about a week or two before I decided to give the third book a chance. And a couple chapters in, the ick factor was too much for me.
Got it. All right, listeners. So if you're listening out there, check those trigger warnings.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. What is, if you could only pick one, and I feel like we've probably already answered this, but your favorite series?
I mean, I'm going to have to go with Cassandra Clare and the Mortal
Yeah.
Instruments, the Shadowhunter series. Although I
Yeah.
will say a lesser known, I do want to put in a lesser known book here. It's not a big book series as far as page counts, but it is two series basically that this author did intertwined. I think it's a total about 15 to 20 books all together. The author's name is Chloe Neal, and the first series is the Chicago Vampires, the Chicagoland Vampires. And then the second one is the Heirs of Chicagoland, which just obviously follows the children from that first book. Not romance, it's urban fantasy, but really good series. So if anybody's looking for a little vampire female butt kicking heroes, that's a great series that I always like to recommend as well.
Nice. I'm gonna have to look into that one. I'm in my vampire era right now. Your last 5-star book.
Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. I think that so far is one of my favorite books this year.
Same. I agree. That's definitely making the top 10. A book that surprised you, either in a good or a bad way.
I want to say Pucking Around. I know I keep talking about this book, but that book and the series itself has really surprised me, and taught me more about relationships than I had expected, and just more of like the different dynamics of relationships. So I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, nice. The last book you purchased.
Pucking Wild, actually, the second book to that series was just re-released through her new publishing contract.
A book that you've seen everywhere, but you have no desire to read it.
Anything by Colleen Hoover.
A book that you loved growing up.
I want to say the book collections by Shel Silverstein, the poetry collections. This is Where the Sidewalk Ends, and I forgot the other one, something in the attic. But yeah, it's poetry collections that I read as a child. Really got me into poetry. I wrote a lot of poetry growing up, and I still do like to read poetry now.
And last one, I know you've got a lot to choose from. A book that you hope to read soon.
I really want to finish this book that I started last year, actually. You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Dario. I am really struggling with the book, not because it's a bad book. It's a really good, interesting story. I don't want to give too much away, but the synopsis basically is just like these two actors on a show. And so they're playing a couple, but there's a lot of times where you're reading the dialogue or even the inner monologues of the characters, and you can't tell if they're speaking from the character's point of view or the character of the show's point of view. And so I'm struggling with that book. I have the second one. The third one's coming out next week. Later this year. I really, really, really want to read it. It's another Latina author, so I definitely want to support that, and I really want to love her books. Plus, one of the authors that I do follow, April Asher, I asked her at a book event recently who her must buy authors are, and she did say Alexis Daria. So now I'm like, well, now clearly there's a reason, and I have to really finish the book. So I started reading it last September for Hispanic Heritage Month and just was kind of struggling with it. So I do plan on getting back into it at some point this year and finishing it up.
Is there anything else that you want to leave with our listeners today?
Just book reading is supposed to be fun, guys. That's why we do it. We do it to escape the monotony and the traumas of real life. And some of us do it to learn, and some of us do it for whatever different reasons we have. But it should be fun. Don't waste your time on reading a book that you're not into. Put it back on the shelf. Return to it later. You might not mentally be prepared for that book now. 5 years you might be. It might end up being your favorite book, but it might just not be what you need right now. So DNF the books, put it to continue later. Read what you want, read what you like, and F anybody else who says differently. Sorry.
Right. I love it. Can you tell us a little bit more about where we can connect with you online, what social platforms you're on, what kind of content people can expect from you, all of the things?
Okay, so I am not really great at the video content creating yet, but I do like to, put up a couple of memes and a lot of book recs, a couple of reviews you'll find. Mostly you can find me on IG at Books, Tea, and Travel. You can also find me on Fable. I'm really loving Fable. If you guys aren't on Fable, I highly suggest it. Fable is great. You really should. It's what we
They have a
hope
community aspect?
It is
I
a
thought it was
community.
just if you were a part of someone's book club.
No, it is a community. Like, it is what we
Mm.
wish Book Talk was. You're
Okay.
just interacting with just other book lovers, and there's so much
Okay.
support. So you can definitely catch me on there. Lil Miss Reads a Lot. I'm also on Storygraph as Little Miss Reads a Lot as well, and Goodreads as Sky Paz.
All of those links will be in the show notes, so you can just click on it and go connect and say hello and, of
Yeah,
course, talk about books.
yes. And are you on Storygraph?
I am on Storygraph. Yes.
To find
I
you.
haven't fully switched over from Goodreads to Storygraph. I definitely love Storygraph more, especially because it's, BIPOC owned. Yes, my Storygraph, I had to double check. My Storygraph is just JJ Braggs, JayJayBraggs. So, yes, we can definitely connect on there. And like I said, I'll get all of your links and add those to the show notes, so that everyone can connect with you. But I love this conversation. I really think people need to give big books a try. Like, it's okay. Test it out. They're not scary, and you'll be surprised. Like, I have a friend and I gave her, I got her started on a series, and she's not a big fantasy reader, but man, she flew through that series and boom, it was like, okay, do you have anything else like this that I can read? So just give it a chance.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Obviously there's some hesitation to seeing when you get these big books, but I have not been disappointed yet by any of the big books that I've read. So, guys, take your time. You don't have to finish it in one sitting. You don't have to finish it
Right.
in 3 sittings. You don't even have to finish it in a week. You can always come back to them. That's the best thing about books. They're there when you're ready for it, when you have time, when you need them. They're that's why we love them. So, just take your time.
Right.
Don't force yourself to read anything that you're not into, but you do need to give bigger books a little bit more time. But don't be scared. You might find a book that you
Yeah.
really love.
Yeah, such a good point, because it took me 9 months to get through Babel, and not because it was bad. I gave it like 4.5 stars. Not because it was bad, just because I don't know. Maybe I wasn't in the mood for it. But once I hit like 50%, then I finished it in like a week. Like, I was like, oh my god. So yeah, you're absolutely right with just taking your time, and it's okay. Come back to it when you're ready. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, bye.
Hey, everyone.
Hey book lovers, one last thing before you leave. Are you currently looking for a group to read and chat about books with? If so, I'd love to invite you to join us on our current buddy read of Anna Maria and the Fox by Lina de la Rosa. We'll be having a virtual meetup to discuss this book on Sunday, May 19th. All of the details, including the link to join the discussion and our monthly book thread, can be found over on the Geneva app, which you can access by clicking the link in the show note. Quick reminder that all books mentioned in this episode can also be found in the show note. Thanks so much for joining us and wishing you a wonderful reading adventure until we meet again. Chat soon.